Hello everyone, I'm Kibitz and welcome to Foundry. It's a factory game with an infinite world to exploit and explosives. Lots of explosives. So I wondered, what could mad Mr. Factory Man accomplish with 100 hours in this game? Well, it turns out a lot. Especially once I found out there's like fracking and oil and a sales market, but okay, getting ahead of myself here. Step one was to start. And like any game, we're just falling to a random planet from space.
Welcome,
and,
operator.
Oh.
I'm Carl, your facility manager.
No.
My goal is
No. Okay, goodbye. We all know how the beginning of factory games go. You go mine your iron, you go mine your copper, you smelt that down, then you automate the smelting, automate the mining, and start automating science to learn stuff. Like that, there's coal in the game, or ignium, which you can burn for some easy automated power instead of feeding biomass burners for 20 years. Oh, but who dis? It's exposition bot C3BB, who is definitely not evil. And it let us know what our main objective was, and it's to fix the space station up there, eventually. Like, give me a break, I just spent like 3 hours automating plates, okay? I can't really fix the space station, but I am getting somewhere because I feel like I got the mechanics figured out, where it's a lot like Factorio, where you have to use loaders to grab stuff off of belts. Except the loaders are toggleable and have unlimited throughput. But getting items up and down is a little goofy, but there'll probably be a better solution once we get moving on the tech tree. To do that, I needed 1 million different items automated, so I had to get building an item mall. So I brought this powered floor all the way over to the ocean here, and with the iron plates and these rods, we can automate practically everything we need. And very quickly, things start to go a little crazy and it gets a little busy, but hey look, all the systems work, and we can start our block base up, in which we have our base layer. Then once we need more stuff, we just build another floor right upstairs, and we just keep doing that with pretty much every single thing in the entire game, and eventually, we'll have a wonderful factory that's filled to the brim with spaghetti. Spaghetti that eventually produces both blue and red science lunchboxes, which will allow us to learn even more. Perhaps even learn a little bit about explosives. Oh, you better believe it. Oh, and if I forgot to mention, the world is fully destructible. Besides blowing up nature, our factory is getting pretty big, and I've researched steel, so most of the C4 has to be used to dig up extra resources. Because for whatever reason, resources are deep underground, which is clearly only because nature hates me, and which is why I destroy nature. Oh, but goodies secured, along with a fresh supply of coal. That got brought back to base and turned into steel by crushing the ores and smelting the ores and then transporting the goods off to base. But you're probably wondering why not bring the steel uppies? Well, since the map is infinite, we can collect an infinite amount of ores. But I'm pretty sure we can't build infinitely upwards, so eventually we're just gonna reach like a limit there. So typically I do smelting and lower order processing lower down, so I can keep stacking high-tech stuff up higher and higher. So some production chains, like for concrete, I just keep at the ground level, and then I'll transport back to base, which after only a few hours in is getting a little out of control already. And oh boy, the belt work. Let's not talk about the belt work. And surprise, surprise, burning coal ain't really cutting it either. So I've advanced into the future, where instead of us burning coal to run a turbine to make power, we can build a boiler that burns coal to make steam that turns a turbine to make power. And that makes us a lot more power. High voltage power, which can't be transported via the floors. No, you have to build a power pole and connect it to a transformer, which makes a quadrillion more power. All of which we're gonna need because I can smell oil on the horizon. Or maybe that's just distinct from my disgusting looking base. Yeah, I can't handle how it looks. It's horrible. So let's take our personal elevator to our 3rd floor, where we're gonna automate all the cool decorative items this game has to offer. And yeah, this took no time at all. Barely an inconvenience. But actually, it was a lot easier because we have these item elevators now, and they are the best. We also have a lot of cool decorative stuff, like doors, new floors, and other decors, which I use to slap together a basic base design. Not the best, but it's something to start with, right? Right. But now, oil? I'm thinking oil time. Or they call it alumite in this game. But my freedom senses are telling me that this is actually oil, brother. The oil researched, bringing the power over. Now we're extracting freedom. How much freedom? Apparently 7.5 million freedom. Hopefully this little pipe can handle all that. Because in what should be a shock to no one, we're gonna be using a lot of oil. Because we need to distill it into a variety of things like liquid polymer, which we turn into polymer boards, and the polymer boards become circuit boards because it ain't a factory game unless you need 50 quadrillion circuit boards. But what makes Foundry even better is there's waste gas. Oh, finally a game that synergizes with my insatiable need to destroy ecosystems. But on an even better note, they make an excellent decoration on my factory. In fact, all the oil buildings do. So I'm gonna kind of break my own rule here and add a couple processing buildings up there. But these are gonna be very special processing buildings because they're going to make low density alumite, which I can process through some fluid assemblers and a chemical processor to make liquid fuel. The primary ingredient in Jetpack fuel. Oh yeah, there are jetpacks in the game. Almost as cool as explosives. Let's go. No more peasant trotting, and I can start to use my base as designed. Because early on, I saw that we could get a jetpack. So I designed my base here with that in mind. And in the middle, where we have our main item bus, I just left it open so we can fly up through all the floors without taking the stairs or an elevator, and it makes my life so much more convenient. And it greatly helped me set up my circuit board production as well. And circuit boards are mission critical to make energy cells. And the energy cells can make solar panels. And when you have solar panels and infinite resources across the map, well, that's a recipe for a lot of fun. But now that I can fly, I want to make a huge decorative pass of the base. That way I could reorganize things too and prepare for the infinite power phase of the game. So really quick, spruced up this wall, did something with the back wall, along with adding some more processing. And as for this wall on the right here, we just don't talk about it. We'll figure something out with it at some point. But the organizing helped a ton because I was able to get all of the fluids neatly in one place. Kind of. And using some chemical processors and fluid assemblers, we now have the energy cells, which let us automate all of the new electric stuff like solar panels, which don't make a lot of power, but we have infinite of them. So now out front here, I have redesigned our basic smelting area. And we got some big power poles going over to our new battery bank and solar power farm, which we will expand forever. Probably somewhere else though. Because after 24 hours, we only have the fundamentals done. Only a bit of dabbling in the spaghetti. And it was at this point in the game I knew I was doomed. Because once we get the maintenance drones, there's something called construction industry with transport ships, modular buildings, and a whole lot more. And what really sent me over the edge was something about a sales warehouse. Because the only thing I like more than oil is a strong economy. So same story with every production line. We find an empty floor, we build a new machine, check the recipe on the drones, and look for some items to yoink with a splitter. And add to the infinite spaghetti. Or at least that's what I've been doing up until this point. But very wisely, I decided to use the floor to reorganize all the items since things were getting a little out of control. That turned out to be a tremendously good idea because the drones, along with all the drone equipment, took like practically every other item in the game. Because the drones don't really work how I thought they would. You set up a modular building, add components to it, then transport ships go and pick up building materials from a building supply warehouse, drop them off at the project, and then drone ships come and drop off the drones to do the actual construction. Then after a long time, or depending on how many construction ships you have, you get your modular building, where in our first one here is a scanner, which is checking out the map looking for new resources that we haven't found yet. And so far, so good. It found us more oil. Lots of oil. Oh, look at that, it's like right there. But that's for later. After we finish our other modular building, which is a radio tower that can communicate with the wreck of the orbital station. And what we learned from the station changed everything. The space station has a sales platform. So that station needed to be fixed now. Which was way easier than I thought, honestly. Surprisingly, not as easy to sell to it though. Had to make a couple base modifications here by adding on a sales warehouse. That can only be set to sell maintenance drones right now. At least it'll get us the money. So the transport ship will go grab the stuff to sell, then send it down to the sales platform where we get rewarded with fee, the universal currency. So little drones, go out and make me rich. Because it took me way too long to incorporate that extra warehouse on the side of the base, but you know, it works. And the transport ships had no problem picking up the goods either, which let us complete our first sale, making us fee. But we also acquired a new objective, to make line go up and please the shareholders. And who are the shareholders? Well, now you're asking the right questions. We don't get to hoard our wealth for long though, because we have to reinvest the fee back into our factory by converting the fee into thermalite plates. But look, you gotta use money to make money, right? And in our case, we use that money to make yellow science lunchboxes. After beefing up our production a little bit, that will unlock us a lot more stuff to scale out the wazoo. Like better belts and better elevators, modular storage tanks. But most importantly, we want to make our way down to fracking. Because now the game has changed. We're worried about profits. We need things to scale. And technically speaking, we have infinite resources, as the map is infinite and there will always be more ore veins to scoop up. But that takes time, because when the ore veins run out, we have to fly around and set up a new mining area. But once we have the fracking towers, we can find ore veins that can be converted into infinite ore sources. So no more digging up holes in the ground. So we can focus all of our efforts on scaling production, which will then lead to more profits. And if that's the game plan, we're gonna need a lot more power. Like pretty much sacrificing an entire biome of the planet. A lot more power. So I found this other desert nearby and we'll just brick it over time and cover it all with solar panels. More importantly, we're gonna have to go and find new resources called Pellexite and wherever the heck just normal ore veins are. But I got really lucky, and while collecting more copper, I built infrastructure right over top a coal vein, which instead of looking like these little resource pockets that we just send the little miner guys off to, they're these huge underground deposits, surrounded by unbreakable ore. Like for real, it's unbreakable. Like I researched a mining laser to figure out how to break it unbreakable. It turned out though that you have to dig to the vein's weak spots and then set up a mining drill on it. Well, after you clear out some space. But once you get them down, they'll start digging into the deposit here. And at the center of this ore vein is a core, which along with fracking will allow us to get infinite resources. But all that is a little ways off, so all we can really do for now is get the equipment set up and have the vein miners start digging towards the core. In either way, it's fine because we have a lot more to do while we wait for the science to research, like dig infrastructure tunnels, scale up production chains for critical resources like circuit boards, while also maintaining the stability of the universe. Yeah, the game, not super jazzed about me building all of this stuff all in one place. But you know, for a game in early access, at least it's running, so I'll take what I can get. Speaking of, we got Mark II smelters to build, assemblers to upgrade, and with the solar power dumpster, we could build a lot more machines. But that'll always be going on in the background, as we continue to push forward through the tech tree and getting into the late game resources. Or really, silicone, which we have to go and extract from a nearby ore vein over here. But I found the top of it over some hills and started blasting. Like a lot. Like in hindsight, kind of like a stupid amount, but I learned a way more efficient way later on. And at the time, all we needed was enough material to get things started. Because with just a small amount of the textilite back to base, all we had to do was crush it down, smelt it into little Twinkies, and then send it off into the arc furnace, so we could send it in its liquefied form back up into the main base, to be casted into silicone wafers, which make our CPU, which was the new difficult part we needed in order to make the advanced science lunchbox. So with that, and a lot more spaghetti and reorganization, we can tack towards the fracking tower. Oh yeah, which requires fracking liquid, which I'm planning to make a lot of over at our oil base here. And we're gonna store it all in a giant tank, which if you max out, can hold like 600,000 liters of stuff, which will be very handy once we start fracking the planet. The funny thing was though, there's an unexpected hiccup in the production chain. Because to make the fracking liquid, you just had to make it in a chemical processor, which is no biggie. It just needs some water, some processed oil, and then air. And I was like, wait a second, how do you make air? Like our base is spaghettied out the wazoo, making all sorts of things, from circuit boards to advanced components to freaking drones. But nowhere in the tech tree did I see where we made air. And no, it wasn't actually steam either, because hot air is very different, right? I was like, how can this be? Like, I've been through so much of the science, we're on the end game stuff. So I was going through the tech tree, through everything, and I just couldn't find it. And it turns out that to get air, it's one of the final things you can research in the whole game, because they tied it together with this super advanced blast furnace tech. So I had to tech all the way to the end of the tech tree to get the modular intake valve thing in order to finally get the air to the machines and get it running. But once it was done, I could take a very long, exhausted sigh of relief. Okay, air is online, fracking liquid is being produced. Now we can poison the world. And to celebrate, I started building a huge pipeline project that would destroy more of the environment, and also to move the fracking liquid all over the planet. Now, was that sort of thing ridiculously overkill? Would a small pipe have handled the same amount of fluid? Well, yes. But are you really an industrialist if you don't build intercontinental pipelines? I don't think so. The last thing to do then was just to clear some space and put down the base of our first fracking tower. Being a modular building, you could build it small, but why bother with half measures when you could bring it to full mast? You think that's gonna get me demonetized, guys? I think that might get me demonetized. Support me on Patreon. But okay, the building's done, so we're in the clear. After completing the pipeline, the fracking liquid is in place to get the party started, which came with some really good news and some really bad news. Good news is that most of our mining drills made it to the core of the veins, so we have the infinite materials. Bad news is I made a bit of a whoopsies. Because back on the fracking towers, it'll tell you the throughput of how much fracking liquid the tower needs. And I saw the max throughput was like 37,000 liters per minute. So I was like, oh my gosh, for every fracking tower we make, we need 37,000 fracking liquid? Well, no, that's like the max. But each miner on the vein only took up 5 liters of fracking liquid per minute. And I may have gone a little overkill with the production of fracking liquid. Like, very overkill with it. Whoopsie daisies. But you know, overkill is better than not overkill? So yeah, that problem should be solved, forever. And we can start expanding on our mining operations. Because each of these veins has a lot of weak points we can exploit. So lots and lots and lots of digging to do, which I was like kind of annoyed about. But then it turns out that all of the weak points are on the same height level. So you can see that these 2 weak points are on the 125, then it goes down to 80, 56, etc. So by the time you get all of your infrastructure and stuff set up, you can actually have a very organized mining operation. And this brought me great joy. But then I learned something even more fantastic, and it was all about personal elevators of all things. And it wasn't just that you could bring high voltage power vertically very easily with them, but it's that the elevators are actually mining machines. They don't require power, you can set them up anywhere, and then you can configure them to any height. So let's just say we wanted a floor on, the bottom of the world. Easy. Confirm. Well, then the elevator will start to construct itself to get to that height, no matter what's in its way. So then imagine setting a bunch of elevators all up at once. You could dig a very deep, very big hole very, very quickly and easily without the use of thousands of explosives. Thus getting rid of the most difficult part about ore vein extraction stuff. Now there still is a lot of work to do, like blasting around and setting up decorations and equipment, but that combined with all the infrastructure we built earlier made setting up fracking so easy. It also just made the environment look so much better when it's like half destroyed and covered by a pipeline. Oh, and I suppose having infinite of all the resources now is kind of nice too. Oh wait, actually, no. Sorry, I misspoke. You don't get infinite resources once you have fracking, because you can get copper, you can get limestone, coal, the tellurium or silicone, and iron, but one's missing. That's right, oil. Because even at the end of the game, you're constantly going to have to run around and set up oil pipelines everywhere to go and gather that delicious crude. And in my opinion, that is the best design decision ever. Because you get to build giant mega factories, sell goods to the stars, and then constantly exploit the planet you're on looking for oil. Like, what could be more perfect for a factory game, right? But at this point, I really realized I was in the danger zone because we just got the unlimited resources from fracking, and there's just so many things we could do now. Oh, not to mention check out the game's signature building, the blast furnace. The end of the game superstructure that triples ore to ingot production, but it's super complicated, requiring entirely new production chains and buildings to get it running. Like this industrial hot air stove. Not to be confused with air or steam. All wildly different. But anyway, I got the whole thing built and it looked fantastic. And I had this amazing idea of making this massive super smelter zone next to all the fracking rigs. Like we'd have our main base way over here, and then we could infinitely expand the furnaces over throughout this biome. But brother, look at how cool this looks. What do you mean I'm not gonna see this near my main base? So, change of plans, I abandoned this one, and then built 3 more over by our main base. Was that a good idea? Probably not, but look at how cool they are, my goodness! I had to see at least a couple of them nearby, right? Right. And it required a whole bunch of stuff, and there's a ton of numbers, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna have to set up a new factory for all this, because we have to make all of the hot air, which requires normal air. But also we needed limestone for the process for whatever reason. So I had to go into the mountains and go set up a new fracking endeavor. But then after belting that halfway towards my base, I was like, that's too much work. Is there anything in the tech tree that can save us? And there is! They're cargo ships. Different cargo ships. That can actually move items that we want. And all we need is a launch pad and a destination. A little Billy bot in here will fly resources around for us. Thank you for saving me a couple more hours of setting up infrastructure. So now it can just be flown in and delivered right to where we need it to be. And then we just had to load it into the blast furnace. And then the last thing was just the normal ores and this crushed and baked coked ignium. And that was it. We had the air, we had the pipes, we had everything set, ready to go. Let's get the thing started, and then suddenly, no. Insufficient hot air. Which kind of had me confused because, you know, we have some hot air, okay? It's at least more than 0. But after like 20 minutes of tinkering, I finally found the problem. A filter that's on the 2nd floor of the machine, which meant I was out of the woods, right? Nope. Well, I finally ended up doing the math, and yeah, it actually turns out I did not have enough hot air, like at all. The game was right. You just needed so much more. You need 3 hot air towers per blast furnace. And only after all that was built did the blast furnace actually start running. And all that was left to do was cast all of the molten metal into the parts that I wanted in a bunch of casting machines. Technically, we needed like 60 of them per blast furnace, but the base is too small here. So future Kibs will have the opportunity to set the rest of the equipment up. For now, we're able to get a good part of it running. And I could happily say that our blast furnace area wasn't just a decor piece, but a functional factory, and part of our amazing mega build here. And that's when I hit the 100-hour mark! And I was going to end things off here, but as you might tell from the chunk of the video that's still left, there was a little change of plans. Because with the infinite resources and the blast furnaces working, I couldn't stop playing until we had more profits. And the only way to do that was by building assembly lines, which is a whole nother huge part of the game. So whoopsies, the title was clickbait and we're going into overtime. Except at this point, I had been playing for weeks. I had no idea what the heck was going on in my world anymore. So I ran around everywhere, checking power, making sure like it was okay. But my base sure wasn't, and that's even after it's loaded in. The interior was an absolute spaghetti disaster from all the belt pilfering I was doing. Like, oh, there's some iron plate, let's split it over for X, and Y, and sure, Z, why not? And yeah, that's not really a good long-term plan. And then the assembly line tech itself was like, what? Well, generally when I get started on something crazy like this, I try and automate the buildings for the project first. Like we need this assembly line printer, producers, a sales warehouse to sell whatever the heck we're creating. I think it's robots? Yeah, it's robots. Well, okay. Looking through my base, there was no more room at all for anything. Because the plan to keep building up failed. Because I actually reached the top of the world. Sad. No more uppies for Kibitz. This was all the room that was left. So in my head, I was at least like, okay, let's try and get like the assembly line buildings automated in the main base, and we'll do the rest somewhere else. But it would be a valiant spaghetti quest, since there wasn't a lot of room left on the outside of my base, at least aesthetically, to put down more conveyor elevators. And downstairs, I snuck in as much automation into every nook and cranny possible. So I assure you, there was no more room for nothing. We had to go up. But after training so long in the art of spaghetti, I made it work. And after many hours, it was all set and ready to go. Unfortunately, the rest of the base up higher would just have to be used for decorations, but I wasn't worried because there's actually a lot of stuff to work with. And I was more so excited to get started on all of the robot parts, since the only option was to build an entirely separate factory for them. And after dealing with all of this for so long, oh my gosh, I was so excited to start fresh from a clean slate, not having to dodge wires or belts or aesthetic footpaths that I've tried to maintain. No, we could just start again with having all of the items in the game we needed automatically produced right next door. So it really felt like I was playing like New Game Plus or something, since the whole production chain was so much different than everything else. Because the assemblers were gone. The production lines are huge and are very involved. So right at the start, you have to select what to configure, and the only thing right now is the surface robot, which starts with the torso. Once you have the torso, go to the next assembly part and configure it to attach a different piece, like an arm or a head or a leg, whatever. And you do that for all the parts of the body. Then, you need to weld it all together. And to finish it all up, you give it a spiffy paint job, which of course is going to be red. And then it should be good to go to sell. Simple, right? Well, it started simple since we had so much production online, we could bring over a ton of belts and items over to the new factory area, where I expanded a lot, so we could re-automate a lot of the basic components, like steel beams, or electronics, and almost everything in between. But the robot parts are a lot more complicated than that. Like for example, we actually do need to make robot parts. They take like Thermalite sheets, and you get the Thermalite from selling the maintenance drones. So we need to make more maintenance drones so we can get more Thermalite so we can make those sheets. To make the robot parts, to make the other robot parts. Okay, easy, Kibitz screamed into the void. And thus began the spaghetti over here, getting all the parts over to these assemblers so we could dramatically increase our drone production. But it worked, and sales went out the wazoo. So much so that our old graph looks very sad. But I digress. We smelted down the Thermalite bars, casted them, and sent them over to make the robot parts, which was kind of the raid boss here. Because I realized we're making enough of the other parts in the main base to easily keep up with the production over here. Because you see, past Kibitz was like, oh, I don't need to worry about numbers, we'll just keep making stuff. It's an early access game for Pete's sake, the numbers will probably change anyway. So I never really realized that, oh, I'm making like a quadrillion of these hydraulic pistons and stuff, which are in the main base only to make the assembly line parts. It only made sense to ship that stuff over to the new factory and then let her rip, bud. And although it looks crazy, it actually wasn't too bad. It's a new factory, right? We have all the space in the world. The only thing that's a little annoying was making paint, because oil is like way over there. Not to mention distance, but holy macaroni, if you thought the belt spaghetti was bad, bro. Oh, the pipes were so much worse. But Mr. Kibitz, he do be a miracle worker, and a little bit insane. That was the last step, so after reconfiguring the assembly line, our product production was finally underway. And that was it. Our products were done. And I could finally rest easy, knowing that I've done the shareholders proud. But still, there's one last thing left to do. And that was to finish up decorating my main base along with its interior, then do some general cleanup around the world. Because you know how I mentioned the world was fully destructible, right? Well, that did include my own stuff as well. So enjoy the fireworks. And that was my 100 hours in Foundry, plus a little overtime. So shout out to the patrons who directly support me and make these kinds of videos possible. And for now, I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of their day, and bye-bye.